First of all, to those who have joined us, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you're having a good week. And unfortunately, they're talking about more rain, and it's looking like it may come back over the same area that received so much rain the last time. Of course, it can go either direction, but I hope and pray that you all do not have a tremendous amount of rain that you have just survived one time already. Before we get into any questions that you have, I want to point out a few things. First of all, if you're in section 4, I have read everything that has been posted and given you a score. Now, if there is something that you have posted and it has not come to my grading screen, make sure you check and see where you posted it and make sure that I have seen it. And if you can't figure out where that is, then send me a note so that I will know where to start looking for everything. But section 8, I still have several more to grade. I've started on the task 3. I think I've got most of the task 2s finished and made comments, and some of the task 3s I've just started. And since I've come to that, I want to share my screen and just remind you of where some things are. I'm going to try that. We'll hope it works right. So let's go to my share the screen. And this is what I'm going to look at and share. All right. If you'll look, now can you see this? Is it showing up on your screen? Okay. If you will look over on the side, the whole first set of things is the AAPSL. So if you will look under the first place you post your draft is under the task for review, and everybody's doing that. The second place you also post for your group members, you can post their peer reviews in the same place. The peer reviews you want me to grade and give you points for need to go under the completed peer review Dropbox. And that's where that's what I'm showing here. And if you will look, there's a place for one peer review for task 1 and your second one. And there's one for each one for you to place each one of yours so that you get all of the credit. At the very bottom is a place for your Zoom conference for task 1 and 2 of the AAPSL. So make sure that you don't forget that that is there and you don't have to post it in the same place as one that you've already done. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And also I want to point out the assignment Dropbox. The assignment Dropbox is when you have made all of your changes, and see, I only need to see your work 3 times. I need to see your draft, then I need to see your 2 peer reviews for each task under where I can grade it, and then I need to see your final. Now, regardless of what our timeline shows when something is due, we're way off of that because of all the things that have happened with the weather and all. I would like for you to make sure that when you post your final task that you made all the changes that have been recommended by your peer reviewers, by me, and by Dr. Tillman, and that she feels really good about what you've done. That way, when I see it here and it's task 1, then I shouldn't be having to make the same comments that I made previously. So I realized that there may have been some issues because so many of you were trying to keep up with the timeline that you may have posted it before it was totally finished. And that is fine. I don't count anything off against you. But because we're getting into a crunch time for 3, 4, and 5, I wanted to make sure that you realize you don't have to keep submitting it to me for me to read. I just need the draft. I need to see the 2 peer reviews, and I need to see the final, and that is under the Dropbox. Now, when we get into the AAPSL, we will also have the same thing that we're dealing with. So now, if I can find stopping share and come back to seeing you, I just wanted to remind you of those things, and I think most of you know that. but I think some of our people who don't join us for these sessions may need this information. So hopefully they will watch this. Let me see if there's any other notes that I needed to point out. Okay, I think those are the notes that I had. So what I want you to do now is look at your agenda. And first of all, do you have any questions or concerns that you need for me to address? Okay. Yes, ma'am, Kelly.
So on each of our tasks, like, do you want what was on like the, not rubric, but like on the example, like task 1, like what it was, or do you just want like our information?
I really don't care at all whether you have those directions, and
Okay.
I don't think it matters because there is a rubric when it goes to the scoring. There is a rubric at the back that has all of that information on it.
Okay.
So I don't think you have to. I don't think it matters if you do.
Okay.
I think it is fine either way you go with it. But for my purposes, I just want to see, I'm skipping right over that. You know, I'm going directly looking for what you've written as task 1 and your information, because that's the same for everybody.
Yeah, I knew like you and Dr. Todd would do that, but I wasn't sure if the people that actually grade us would do that, or if they would prefer it not to be there or to be there.
We see they're going to have the same rubric that we have been sharing with you.
Okay.
So and actually that rubric, when you get to the evaluation screen, and the reason I know this is I was an evaluator.
Okay.
Before I started teaching, and I still evaluate some I'm not currently teaching that are in sections 604 and 605. When you get to the evaluator screen, it says, first of all, it says, do you wish to evaluate, or something like that. Then you hit that you're going to evaluate. Then it comes up a split screen. And on one side, it is your work. And on the other side, it is the rubric. And then you have to hit one or the other, and it gets larger so you can actually read that. So what I usually do is I read through each one of those sections and go back to that section and match it. So that's what I do, and I think most of us probably do the same thing. But that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I would defer to Dr. Tillman on that. If she wants it there, then that's okay, but I don't care. As I'm fine with just saying task 1 and start with the information supposed to be in it without all those corrections.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else have a question? Yes, Lori?
In task 4, where it says to include the AAPSL action plan summary graphic organizer, even though, so we made it, so does that mean that we just refer to it and it goes in the appendix, or do you want it, or is it supposed to be actually in with the narrative?
It has to be easily found. And when I say that, that's really up to you. But if you are going to put it in your appendix, make sure you refer to it in your narrative and say the graphic organizers for whatever you're planning to use it for is found in appendix A. That way they know it's there and they know to look for it.
Mine was a formatting issue because my paper is obviously in portrait, but my plan is in landscape, and I can't put them together.
Yes, you're right. And then I think that will be fine. Just make sure that you note in your narrative that it is in your appendix and whatever you label that appendix.
Well, and all of the previous things that I've been talking about in my narrative is that document. You know, it's just in detail about that document. But so if I refer to it in the appendix, then they can actually look at the document that I just finished telling them about. Is that
right?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Or you can do all your narrative and just say the document, the action plan itself is in appendix A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that okay, Dr. Tillman, as far as you're concerned?
That's fine. I've actually had people turn it and do it portrait and to the landscape, but and I didn't fuss at them too much.
That's a good question. All right, anybody else have a question? Okay.
Oh, could I just, I was a little bit late because I was on a Zoom with a student, and I'm
That's
so sorry
fine.
to be late, but I think you were talking about as you flow from one part of the paper, one task to the next. Some people did not use the template at all. And so if you're not using the template, you definitely need to have some transition, either out of one task or in the next task from the previous task, because it's just too choppy if you don't do it that way. Does that, you see what I mean?
Well, and the question wasn't anything about that. It was whether they include the instructions.
Oh, I see. Well,
And so the instructions, I told them it was in the rubric, and it did not make a bit of difference to me one way or the other whether they included those instructions, because the evaluators are going to have them in their rubric as well. So that was what the question they had asked about was.
Right. And when we get to turn it in, the turn it in percentage includes the fact that they might have included that.
Yes.
So if you see the percentage looks high, but it's because we have to allow for people that put all of that in there. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else before we move on to the agenda? All right. We're to the point that we should be putting it all together. And if you note in my information that I posted on Sunday, my days are running together, I'm sorry. In the information I posted on Sunday, I said you should have finished task 3 by last week, and that by the end of this week, we needed to see 4 and 5. I put an exception there, that exception being you were handicapped by the flood and all the rains and all of the things that occurred in the eastern part of the state. So, and in South Carolina as well. So for all of us to get back on track and try to not have your last part of the semester so miserable, and I'm saying that because you need to be finishing up with the AAPSL within the next couple of weeks, because when you start the AAPTEL, it's the same thing, and you've got something every week that's due. And we're beginning week 7. And so next week will be week 8, which will be exactly in the middle of the semester. And you've got holidays coming up. You've got Thanksgiving. You've got getting ready for Christmas. So the more we can get done or as early as possible, the better off we're going to be. So what I have done is in our sessions, I've covered each one of the tasks, and I did task 5 last week, and task 4 the week before that, and task 3 before that. So we've had each one of them individually covered. So this week I wanted to go over putting it all together. So following, if you look at the outline that I have given you, this is my suggestion, is that you have a title page. And the title page, the name of it is the Analysis and Action Plan for Student Learning. And then you follow the directions for what a title page looks and puts your name and the course number and the date or the semester or the actual course number. Whatever information you feel is going to help you as you are looking back at what you have completed. Then the table of contents is optional, but I think it's helpful for someone who is looking at your information for the first time. And they, if they're looking at it for the first time and they are saying, okay, I want to make sure they have all these tasks, and you have page numbers, then they can go and look at those page numbers. So I'm going to say it's optional, but I do think it makes things easy to be found. Then right behind your table of contents, I would put the school profile. And then after you finish the school profile, I would start with task 1. And I would put all of the information. You title it Task 1, Professional Learning Communities. That can be at the top of the page. It doesn't have to have a page divider in between each one of them. it can just flow from one to the next. But do not start task 2 on the same page that task 1 is in. Finish it, and then start task 2 on a new page. And that title is Academic Needs Assessment. And then you put your task 2 in there. Task 3 begins on a new page, and that's Best Practices. And you put that one in there. Then task 4 is the Action Plan. That begins on a new page, and it follows. Task 5 is the reflection, the competencies that we talked about. And then behind task 5 on a new page begins the references. And then behind the references is the appendices. And each appendix should be on a new page. If one is 1.5 pages, go on to the next page to put appendix B. Now, the one thing that you may have to redo in putting your paper together is labeling your appendix and labeling your and moving all of your references to one page. One of the things to remember is how your reference page should be. It should be based on alphabetical order. So it doesn't matter whether it was task 1 alphabetical order or task 5 alphabetical order. The whole, all of them together needs to be in alphabetical order. So that's one piece you may have to redo a little bit. And you may have to rename or renumber, re-letter the appendices, but that really should be about the only thing that you would have to redo once we have told you that we think it's ready for you to submit. And the only thing that you submit to TaskStream is your final paper with it all put together. Lori, what's your question?
So the transitions, like the introductions and the, like, because for each task we kind of had an introduction and then kind of what our next steps are. And then, you know, so we keep those in there, or do we need to alter those in some way?
I think they need to stay in there because they're an introduction to what you're doing.
Okay.
I'll defer to Dr. Tillman because that's what she was talking about earlier.
Yes.
So,
Oh, okay.
would you like to?
Well, and I would just insert also that remember that this evaluator hasn't been giving birth to this like we have. And they are reading it cold and they're reading it fast because they've got a lot of them to read. And every bit of information you can give them helps them see, because they don't want to look back and see what you said before. They want it to flow. And so that's why I've really encouraged people to do that. It's been successful in the past.
Right. Does that answer your question?
So we don't need to rewrite them. We would keep them the same, or you were saying we would rewrite them?
No, I don't think you need to rewrite them. If you've got the information in there to start with, you shouldn't have to rewrite anything for each one of the tasks.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Oh, while we're talking about that, since Ms. Heatherly was the person talking, I want to say to the whole group that she helped us the other night with an email. She's going to send a link as to how to get that PowerPoint actually attached as a document, so you're not doing pictures, because you folks who are doing pictures in your appendices, you are chalking up big data uses. And by the time you get to the end, you may find that your documents won't fit in TaskStream. So, you know, each of these little individual papers, it looks like it's going through, but you can't just have picture after picture after picture after picture. So she's shared that with you, and I said it was a labor of love for her to do that. But take advantage of it and learn how to do that. Okay?
That's a good point, because now there have been some links that people have shared that I have not been able to open, and some of them have even been PowerPoint. And so I don't know whether it is the computer you're using, maybe whether it is not whether it's a Mac product and it's not interacting correctly, or what. But But if I have not been able to open something, I always send it back and let you know that I can't open it and see what you can do to work on it.
Well, that is actually what Ms. Heatherly has done. And I don't think did you send it to me or did you send it to your colleague, Ms. Heatherly?
I sent it to you, and then you sent it out to everybody.
Okay, I couldn't remember which way that went, but I just wanted everybody to get that, and you should value that because that was really helpful. We think that what happened is that there was some update on Word or on PowerPoint, and that update sort of confused the link because we've never had so many papers that didn't open before. So I think that's what it is, and we are most grateful to you, Ms. Heatherly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Tillman is right. Most of the time, we've never had any trouble opening PowerPoint, but this year I've had some trouble opening PowerPoint. I have also had trouble with some Google Docs, but other Google Docs, I can open them. And in one situation, one student put it on Google Docs, and I could open that, but I couldn't open what she had sent to start with. So I don't know what is going on, but you know, most of the time, if Dr. Tillman and I can open it, your evaluator is going to be able to open it because we're using pretty much the same products that Gardner-Webb folks are using when they're evaluating it and reading your documents. So one of the things I'm finding too is some of the YouTube documents that have been recorded are not opening. And you'll give me the link and I'll go there and it says not available, and it has this ugly black screen with maybe a circle with some kind of explanation point and says not available. And I'm not sure why that is happening, but there's a couple of things that may be the cause of it. If you went in and chose personal, then even if I have the link, I can't open it. It's not going to show up for me. But if you chose unlisted or public, then we can usually view it without any trouble. The unlisted, the only people who can see it are the ones that you share the link with. And so when we're given the link, we can usually open it. The public, anybody that finds the link can open it and read what it's saying. So that, just make sure that you do either unlisted or public. In the past, when we had always been told to use unlisted, but our professor, department chair this year wanted us to use public. So I am doing that, and that way they can tap in and see that we've had these conferences when they have their CAPE visitation in the spring. And I think that's the reason he wanted it public, because if we had shared the links with the class, you know, they would have had to went into our shell to find the links and then go into it individually. And when CAPE comes to evaluate Gardner-Webb in their program and make sure they're doing what they say, they're just like your evaluators. They want to find the information and they want to make sure that everybody's doing what they say they're going to be doing. So, any questions about putting your paper together? Okay. I want you to look, and I know that I'm being very repetitive, and I'm sure Dr. Tillman's told you the same thing, but I put it in bold because I want to make sure everybody understands it. And I know those of you who attend our sessions will understand it, but I'm not real sure that everybody is taking advantage of the YouTubes we post, of the videos that I do on Sundays and post, and if they're not, they're missing some valuable information. So I try to send it out in the agenda as well. And maybe if they will look at that, if they don't use the other resources available to them, it will at least help make sure they don't make some big mistakes. So in bold, it says, remember, task 5 is not the same thing as your competency folio.
Amen.
And we went over that last week. But in task 5, you're reflecting on the entire process, which includes the class, your readings, your internship assignments, and the complete artifact for the AAPSL. And that's all you're looking at for right now. Now, and in task 5, it gives you 8 of the competencies you're supposed to reflect on, and you choose 4 of your own that you choose to reflect on. And those are the things you're putting in your narrative. It is narrative. Dr. Lamb made sure that we understood he did not want evidences in task 5. Now, in the competency folio, you're providing the evidence that you can do the competencies that are expected of school administrators. Now, there is a document that was shared that told where you got information from the various evidences, and those do not always match what you're writing about. But the thing about it is some of those things that you're writing about and that you've done, they can be used rather than you just put it as Dr. Tillman, what's the name of that on the competency folio? There's some things they ask open-ended.
Open-ended.
It would not come to my brain right then.
Yes.
But it can be posted open-ended, even if it is not mentioned as this comes from the AAPSL or this comes from the AAPTEL. So keep in mind that there is a difference between task 5 and the competency folio. I think what Dr. Lamb did when he created the document showing where you could get those evidences from, he was looking at all of the documentation you were going to need to have 3 evidences. Mm-hmm. And he was telling you where you could get it from. And then they left the open-ended so that you could always do that piece and use something that you've done that doesn't fit in either one of those. So just remember that. And then I went ahead and talked a little bit more about that. Now, the next section I put is information and reminders. If you will look in your week, and I'm not going to go back and share the screen. Well, maybe I should. We'll see if it'll work. Let me know if it does. I'll try to share the screen again. And then I want to go to this page. Then I'll go there. And what I am actually looking for is your weekly assignments. All right. Sometimes Dr. Lamb will send us information and he'll say, post this for your students to see. All right. If you will look down at the bottom of week 5, I have posted information related to school-wide action plans. And this was found in Develop and Implement a School-Wide Literacy Action Plan. Now, can all of you see this? Okay. So whenever he sends us information, I usually post it in that week. So it's really important for you all to check the week information. Now, in week 6, because that's when he did it, I posted the information regarding TaskStream and how to set up your account in TaskStream. In addition to that, there's information from Dr. Daggett on successful schools. And that was an article, and it dealt with successful schools and action plans. Now, when I was working, Dr. Daggett was one of the foremost researchers on improving schools and having successful schools. And North Carolina worked with him for years in developing a lot of what they did. And he was a resource for us and did a lot of training in this state. And a lot of the things that came through DPI have his thumbprint on them. So if you will just remember to check and look for information, there is additional information that you can find about things that you might need information about when you're developing these tasks. And I post them during the week. In some of the classes, they have a video slot, but when Dr. Lamb developed the one that I'm teaching, he did not include that. So I make sure I give you that information, and some of those are articles, they're not videos, so it wouldn't fit there. So I try to give it to you about the week that he mentions it or that he sends me the information. Just know that additional resources are posted each week, and to please check those because you may have some very helpful information. Now, on the next page of reminders is that you should be through task 3 unless your school is not open yet due to the hurricane. Now, let me go ahead and talk about, several of you have groups where someone has not posted their draft yet. And I talked with Dr. Lamb briefly about that last night. And what I want you to do is, when they turn in their draft, go back and do the peer review. Don't worry about whether you have 2 now. The important thing is to have 2 at the end of the semester for each one of the tasks. So make sure, except for the task 5 and task 4 of the AAPSL. So make sure that you do it as they turn it in. They can't help that they've been hit by all of the things that they were hit with the hurricane, and they can't help that their schools, some of them still haven't opened. So just keep in mind that some of them are going to be really pushing the deadline, which is making you have just maybe 1 evidence or 1 peer review, but don't worry about that. We're not holding that against you. We're not sticking to a timeline like we might if it was a normal semester. So do them as you can. And if it gets to the point that enough people drop out and you can't get that second one, let us know and we will work with you. Now, to this point, I've not had anyone else to drop out. And so as far as I know, everybody still has at least 3 people in all of their groups. If some of you suspect that someone has dropped out and they have not done it formally through the university, let me know and we'll try to check on them. If at all possible, try to have task 4 and 5 finished by the end of this week, again, unless your school has not been opened again. One thing to put on your calendar that is really important, and you may have received information from it from Dr. Lamb, but he's going to have a town hall meeting next Monday, October the 15th at 6 o'clock. And it is to introduce you to the AAPSL. And that's why I'm saying if he's going to start introducing the AAPSL, that means everybody who can needs to be getting close to finishing up with the AAPSL. So he's trying to keep us on a schedule, and he knows that we're all a week late, and some of them are going to be much more than that. But for those of us who can stay on and get back on schedule, it will be to your benefit, and you can actually enjoy Thanksgiving and Christmas. Otherwise, you might not be able to enjoy either one of them, and you might really have some ugly things to say about all of us in your work. So make sure you put that. I also posted information as an announcement. The Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Bull, is having a Zoom meeting, and it's called Ask Dean Bull. So he would like as many of you as possible to join him. And I posted that as an announcement, and so you should have that information as well. Dr. Lamb reminded us that your TaskStream account should be available to you, and if it is not, to let him know, and he will talk with Seth Opria to see what the problem is. Now, I'm going to talk about the competency folio. It's the same situation. It should also be available to you to begin putting your evidences in as you complete the various tasks. Now, one of the things that I am sure Dr. Tillman has told you is do not wait till the last minute to do the competency folio.
Amen.
We learned that from past experiences. It really stresses you once you think once I can get one thing finished, then I can finish the others in the last couple of weeks. It's a big stressful event to do it like that. So as you get these evidences, go ahead and put them in. And remember, you all have to do all 21 competencies this semester. During this half of the semester, you should have 12 evidences that you can post either, and this will all be from the AAPSL, and some of them can be in open-ended if you're following his suggested group. Now, the next part is bolded for a reason. You need to really take heed to this. Do not submit your competency folio for evaluation until your final semester after, and there's an error, it should be your clinical coach tells you to submit it for evaluation. Now, what you do each semester prior to that is ask your clinical coach to make comments. And if you will watch carefully in the information, either the competency, I think it was the competency folio information that Dr. Lamb sent out, he shows you how to ask for comments. And then he shows you where the submit for evaluation is. You ask for comments this semester, next semester, the first part of the third semester. You do not submit for evaluation until everything is in there. And Dr. Tillman has said it is ready, and you have 63 evidences in the 21 competencies. So that is something that is extremely important. And if I heard Dr. Lamb correctly, if you submit it for evaluation before you are supposed to, he has to clear it all out and you have to start all over again. Nobody wants to do that. So if there's nothing else that I have said that you have heard, make sure you hear this. And I'm sure Dr. Tillman has told you the same thing. But both of us want you to understand how important it is. Get your feedback back. Request the comments. And that's done each semester. But do not submit for evaluation until your final semester and after Dr. Tillman has told you this is ready. So any questions about any of that?
I would say one of the things that happens that it's not sinful, but it sure is irritating, is for people to request comment on the whole folio, because that's obviously one of your options. You're really supposed to request comment on the ones you are working on at the time, because otherwise I have to hunt through all 21 of those suckers and try to find where you've added something, and it does not make my blood pressure happy.
That's a good point. So just remember that, when you are submitting for comments, make sure you submit and identify which ones you want her to make comments on.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. The last little part of our time, and sometimes I know these parts are important because you've got to have the artifacts and they've got to be done and they've got to be done correctly. But I think you may learn a lot from the last part of what I try to include, which is a case study for discussion. Now, this case study that I have included at the bottom of your agenda for tonight came straight out of your textbook. And it talks about you're the principal of a very large high school. It's almost left over from the days of racial discrimination. You have 2,800 students, and they come from nearby projects. You are a magnet program in the fine arts, but there are very few Anglo or Latino students that choose to come. There are no Asian students. So even the magnet program has a large African American population. And so the issue before you at this time is not racial balance of students. It's just faculty assignments. And I think they provided that information just like you provide information about the demographics of your school, but it's really not pertinent to what they're talking about. So what they're looking at as the principal, your school population grows at the rate of 50 students or more a year, and there has been an increased recruitment effort by your magnet coordinator, and people are coming because of that. There are sufficient personnel funds for 3 new positions. But there's a lot of opinions or discord or whatever about what those positions should be. The Fine Arts Department insists that it must have a staff member. The Science Department insists that they need a physics teacher. Your Music Department wants to add a person that can teach strings. The English Department has 2 people who are going to retire, and they say that they need 2 additions. So now, how many people have we talked about that we need already? Is it 5? 6. And you have how many positions? 3. So regardless of what you do, you're not going to make everybody happy. And guess what? That is the life of a school administrator. And that is exactly where you will be. And you will have some people hate you and some people will love you. And you just have to realize that you're going to make your decisions based on what you believe is the best interest of the student body first, the teacher second. And so that has to be your criteria. What is best for my students and what is best for my faculty second. So you do want to think about that faculty, but your job is to look after those students. And then in addition to all of that, your football team has been very successful, and the athletic director has threatened to resign unless he's given 2 more coaches. Well, guess what, folks? I probably have the totally wrong opinion about how to deal with those kinds of things. But I'm going to share my opinion, and you can take it for what it's worth. It's an opinion. I was threatened by a bus driver early in my years of being a school administrator that they were going to quit. Well, we did everything we could to make that bus driver happy. Well, guess what? She still was not happy and she quit. So I learned a valuable lesson then. When someone threatens me, instead of me trying to do what they asked me to do, I said, okay, I'm going to just ask you a favor. Give me time to find someone to replace you. And, you know, most of the time, if they're not really serious, they'll back down. And if they are really serious, they were going to resign anyway, but maybe they will work with you and give you time to find somebody. But even today, whenever I am involved in a committee or something and somebody says, well, this one's going to quit, I'll say, well, okay, let them quit. I have no problem with that. But let's ask them if they won't at least give us time to find a replacement. Now, that may sound very ugly, but I'm just of the opinion you can't beg people to work. They either are going to work because they want to, or you may hang on to somebody that's going to pull you down and pull your whole school down. So if they are thinking about quitting, then maybe it's best for them to quit. Now, I will say there are a few extenuating circumstances that are different from that. One of the examples that I will give is when you can tell a teacher is young and they're extremely good, and young doesn't mean in age, young to the profession. Young to the profession, and you can look at them and talk with them and see that they're about to have a nervous breakdown. That's not when they're not threatening you. They are to the point they don't know what else to do, and they're begging for your help. Those are not the ones that you deal with like I just mentioned. Those are the ones you sit down with. You sit down with their fellow teachers that know them well, and you come up with some kind of a plan to help them survive. It is survival. And they are feeling so overwhelmed that they figure they could find a job doing almost anything and it wouldn't be nearly as stressful as what they're doing. I have had that happen in 2 schools. One I was the principal and one I was the superintendent. We had an excellent teacher. We knew she was going to be wonderful if we could get her through that first year. But that first year, she decided she was going to get married. And then she was teaching English. And so she was so detail oriented and her plans were perfect. And what she was doing in the classroom was very good. But she just felt overwhelmed. And so after one of her evaluations, she just fell apart. And I told her, I said, take some time off, get your wedding planned. We'll have substitutes here. We'll take care of it. Well, we worked with her, and her fellow teachers that knew how good she was knew what was going on. And they said, you know, we'll pick up some of the slack. We'll do that. She doesn't have to do that. We just need to help her get through this. Well, we did. And she is, to my knowledge, still teaching today, and she was an excellent teacher. The other one was when I was superintendent, and she was she was an extremely good planner, and she had everything planned out, and she just felt like she did not have the time to do her lesson plans. And she wanted her lesson plans so detailed and so good that she could make sure she didn't forget anything. Well, her group of team members, there was 3, I believe, in her grade, 4, maybe 4, that were working together. It was middle school, and they were working together. And they realized what was going on, and they told her, we will take your children to lunch. You stay in here, take this 30 minutes, and get whatever you need to be doing ready for the remainder of your day. And they did that for probably 2/3 of the year. Well, she's one of the best teachers that we have, or we had when I was finishing work. So, you know, there are times that what I just said about when somebody threatens you, you don't let them go. You actually work with them. But you will know that by looking at the people that you're talking with, and also their peers will know what's going on. All right, so the coaches have a half-time instructional load. So that's one of the things that you need to look at. And so there you are. Budget proposal sessions are coming up. The district office wants you to recommend something within 3 weeks. You have a personnel committee that can help you, but they rarely agree. And you do have some flexibility. All or part of your personnel budget may be expended for instructional aides. And an aide costs half the salary of a certified teacher. And the question that the book proposes is, what is your approach to the problem? But I posted a lot of questions that I want you to look at that I think you need prior to deciding how you're going to approach the problem. First of all, I don't think you were given enough information. If you were the principal in that school, you would have this information, and your principals in your schools will have this when they're looking at budgets. But what's the enrollment in the current classes? Are some of the classes loaded, and are some of them just barely over half what they should have in there? Are the teacher loads balanced? Are some of the teachers teaching the maximum number in every class, and some teachers have the minimum number in the classes, or maybe just barely have enough for a class? Why do the coaches only teach half-time? Is it policy, or is it concessions given by the school? Now, I will tell you, in the school system where I worked when I was superintendent, the only one that got 2 periods off was the athletic directors. The coaches still taught three periods. We were on a 4-period day. Our coaches still taught 3 periods, and they had 1 for planning. Now, many of them did get planning 4th period so they could leave if their ball team needed to leave, but most people understand that. So you need to find out why that's going on. Then what's the trend in the student enrollment over the past few years? Now, you were told it was increasing 50. Now, if you look at that roughly, 50 students usually means, if you're in K-8, it would be 2 teachers. But at the high school level, if you have classes that don't have close to a full load, you may not need anybody. Then in this day and age of testing, what are the scores on the required tests? How are your students performing on college admission tests? What's the acceptance rate for college admission? How many of your students actually go into music and art if they're in the music and art departments? And so those are pieces of information that you would need before you could make a good decision. So once you have this kind of information, then you have to look at it and think, what is your most important focus for your school and why? And how will you make your decision that you will recommend to the district office? What are you going to do about that personnel committee? They're supposed to be helping you. And how are they selected if none of them will agree? And if they, if they are such independent people and they are only looking for their benefit and their welfare, why are they on the personnel committee? Surely you as the principal have a way of establishing that committee so that they can work together. So then once you have the information that you need, what do you believe are the most important areas to consider when you present your recommendations for the 3 positions that you will be getting? And how will you explain your decision to your faculty and staff? So now that I have went over the situation and questions for you to think about, I would like for you to answer the last question. What do you believe are the most important areas to consider when you present your recommendations for the 3 positions that you will be getting?
Student achievement.
Student achievement? That should be at the top of your list.
Yep.
What else?
Definitely student to teacher ratio,
Yes.
because you don't want any classes to be overloaded that could possibly be relinquished by adding those 3 people. And if you're doing an A-day, B-day schedule for your related arts, you may be sharing a person with another middle school or possibly an elementary school. So with that in mind, I'm not sure if I'd weigh heavily on adding an elective or related arts teacher.
Okay. All right. What are some other ideas? What are other thoughts? Is there a question I left out? You remember, you're looking at a high school. Is there a question I left out?
I think I would also consider student need, like social and emotional needs,
Okay.
and meeting the whole child versus just the academic.
Okay.
With the need in mind, I would wonder if there would be consideration about the exceptional department.
Yeah, of course. And the EC department and the English language learners department and the honors classes, they need to be looked at, how many are signing up for those, and also who qualifies. And those ratios would have to be taken care of as well, to make sure that all of the children got what they needed and what their IEPs said that they were to have.
I don't know how you track this or if you even could, but I'd be interested to know if the kids who were taking those fine arts classes, if that was causing them to do better in their other academic classes. Because, a lot of times kids will work harder because they have a goal in mind, and usually their goal has something to do with not something in that class. It's, there's another reason behind it. And so if they're working really hard in their other classes because of those elective classes, then you might want to consider funding that position, because you don't want the kids to not be, have that opportunity if that's what's keeping them in school and that's what's keeping them, interested in doing things.
And that's a good point. And the other thing that I would ask you to think about is, What do the parents in your community come to the schools for? What occurs in the schools that brings the parents there? What do you think it would be?
Sports.
At the
Probably.
high school level, there's usually 2 or 3 things.
Sports and fine arts.
Sports and the fine arts, which would include the art shows as well as drama and music. That's what people come into. And if you have parents who are real active in the supporting the sports, they will be there when their children are playing sports. They will also run the concession stands, and they will do whatever they can as support. The same is true for band parents. I was a band parent, I know. You know, when that band travels and they're in competitions, you have as many parents usually following them as you do have the kids. And everybody looks after all of those children, not just their own child. If they see a child that someone is not looking after, they make sure that they're dressed right, they've got enough clothing, they've got food, you know, they look after everybody. So, you know, that's also one of the pieces you have to look at is what is it that occurs in your school that gets the parents to come, because you really need those parents there so they will support you. And then if those activities are what keeps the kids in school and encourages them to do better, then your decision might be that you need to add one, you know, it might be that you need to add another coach, or you might need to add another arts position, either music or drama or art. So, you know, you have so many things to think about. So we just have a few minutes left, and in those few minutes, once you get all of your information together and you make your decision, and you feel real good about what you're going to present to the central office because you've got reasons for what you do, and it's not based on who your best friends are, and it's not based on pressure you're getting from parents or pressure you're getting from teachers or pressure you're getting. It's based on the information you found out about what makes your whole school click and what is most important, and you look at those numbers about where you need people. How are you going to explain this to your faculty and staff and get their buy-in to what you're doing?
I think sharing your thought process and all of the things that you considered in making the decision would probably help.
Not only that, but I think just being transparent as you make the decision. That staff will buy into what you have going on instead of, you know, them not knowing what you're doing, and then you come with a decision. This is what I decided.
I think if you think about it, our children want to know why their assignments are what they are. And if we're really sharp with giving our answers, then they'll buy into what you're asking them to do. And a lot of times they'll do what you ask them to do, and they'll do it very well. Our teachers are the same way. They want to know that you're thinking about the whole process and that you're not thinking about one department over another. You know, this year your 3 teaching positions might be in 3 different areas, or it might be there's a bigger need in an academic area, and so maybe 2 positions would go there and 1 bit would be in something else. You also have that option of, could a teacher assistant working under another teacher increase the load? Where could you do that? You could do it with band. You could do it with chorus. Those numbers don't have to meet a certain size. And usually the larger the band is, the larger the chorus group is, the better it sounds. So you know, you could look at what you needed, and then you could add in some situations to get more people. Now, not always is it more people that you need. You may sometimes just get to the point you need to reshuffle because students are not signing up for things. So there's a lot of things to think about. And when I bring these for you to think about, what I'm trying to get you to do is things as an administrator would look at them. and not from your own perspective. And I'm hoping it's going to help you grow to be feeling more comfortable as you get into an administrative role. All right, any other comments? Dr. Tillman, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I was just revisiting that athletic director situation. I tell you, you have to be careful of athletics and band, because the band can wag the school if you're not careful, and so can the athletic people. And if you get the athletic people and the band people mad at each other, oh my gosh, it's a third world war.
Oh, and she is so right. She is exactly right on that one. You know, you have to keep a handle on it. And that's, I mean, no one said the principal's job is an easy job, because you're trying to make the teachers, the students, and the parents and the community all happy. And what happens the year you have a losing team? Oh, life is not fun those years. Except, I will say, one of our schools in the county I was superintendent in, I also grew up in that county. And one of the schools beat the other one about once every 10 years. And the one that would beat the other team, and it's usually football. Now, in basketball, they were more evenly divided. And in girls' sports, they were almost always very evenly divided. But the other school that always won just thought it was a travesty when they got beat by the other team. And I thought, just hush, you know, this team deserves it. They went 10 years and you beat them for 10 years. Just, you know, just get over it. It's not a big deal, you know, but they think it is. I actually had a person who worked in one of the large companies to tell me that he remembered when his team got beat by the team that almost always lost, and it was just awful. And I'm thinking, you're 45 years old, maybe 50, and this is something you remember from high school. Let's grow up a little bit. But I didn't say that. I knew to keep my thoughts to myself. So there are times you're going to have thoughts and you're going to think, these people really? And then you just keep those thoughts to yourself, and you try to figure out how to work together and try to get people on the same page. All right, does anybody have anything else to add, or any questions or anything? I saw a couple of chats here, and I think it's important to look at. We needed to add more minutes to our class periods this year. The principal surveyed us, and this played a huge part in the final decision. And then another one says, we use surveys a lot. The teachers appreciate it. And another one says, it truly drives the we and not an I mindset. And so I think those are all really important things to look at. So yes, you want as much information as possible when you're trying to make a decision. That is so important. All right.
Dr. Todd, I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have submitted 3, and my peer has edited it, and I made changes according to that. But I need to wait on you to look at it before I send it to Dr. Tillman, correct?
No, you can send it to both of us about the same time. And
okay, so because I was waiting to send it to her.
Well, it's been done because I did yours today.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to get 3 to her. I've pretty much have 4 done. I just got 2 things I'm working on.
Like I said, I'm caught up with section 4. I'm still behind with section 5. Actually, I mean section 8. Actually, I was caught up with yours until Sunday, and I was behind with section 4. But I'm working on section 8 now, and I remember reading yours, Sally. That's the reason I remember that I had read it, and I did it today just shortly before.
Well, I wish you could have read the revised after Lori made comments, because I completely changed a lot of things.
Well, and see, that is fine, because that's what her comments, my comments, and Dr. Tillman's are for. That's the reason I said, you know, even if it's later, put in your final after you've got everybody's suggestions.
Okay.
Okay.
I just didn't want to make Dr. Tillman wait, and I I
And
knew
it's
I was
fine.
about.
You don't
That's
have
fine. I have them in the queue, believe me.
you don't have to, whenever you get it ready, submit it to both of us. You don't have to have my comments, because what I'm doing, so that you all know, is whenever I finish with one, I copy what I've written as comments and I put them in a document and send them to her. So she knows exactly what I've recommended. So we're trying this to make sure we don't give you mixed messages.
Okay, I just didn't want her to get that and think that I had not made your suggestions because I'd already submitted to her.
And that's okay, because ultimately we're both seeing things.
Working on the same thing.
Yes, we're both seeing things. We're seeing it through different lenses. And hers would be much more detailed. I look for the big picture kinds of things, and she looks for the more detail to make sure that we have everything in the rubric.
Lori looks for the detail too.
Okay, and that's
Oh, that's good.
That's
Hey,
what
listen,
all the
Lori told me this last time. She said, I really haven't gotten a lot of I don't know how to say. I really haven't gotten a lot of information back from peer reviews. You know, people are just saying it's good and all that. So I gave her some. I nitpicked her and picked it apart for her.
and that is good. That is
I showed
exactly
her what an English teacher could do.
That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to put your teacher hat on.
She sent me what's the thing that you all do?
The tracking changes.
Tracking changes. She sent tracking changes. Lord, I got a lot of work to do.
I finally just quit doing it because I had already spent about 4 hours.
So now, hearing this, you all know why I don't get them turned around. If you've done a tracking changes paper, it takes a while, but they're so much better than saying, just read the rubric again, or you didn't follow, prompt 2. I really.
Well, her suggestions to me really did make my paper better. And I didn't see it until she brought it out. But I was telling my students today, sometimes you just need someone who's not in. Sometimes you think people know the situation, and so you don't think you need to explain that, but that's not always the case. So she's the math mind, and I'm doing reading, so we're going back and forth, but it really was helpful.
And that is really good.
And she's still talking to me afterwards.
Well, you will find that's the way that you're supposed to be in your group.
Right.
And so, that means you all are doing it exactly the way you're supposed to. And sometimes I will make comments that I wish you would say a little bit more in your feedback, because
You said that to me last time once. You've never said that before, so I gave it to you this time. Make sure you check it out.
I will. Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything to say or questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to end the recording, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week.
Dr. Tillman.
Yes.
Dr. Tillman, can I give you a brief phone call after this?
Yes, just call me right now. I'm sitting at my computer and my phone is not too far away.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Bob.
Dr. Todd,
Yes.
I have a question that's not really related to this, the assignments in this course. I was wondering if maybe you could offer some suggestions for the right person to ask.
Okay.
It's about certification. I'm in South Carolina, and I have 2 coworkers who have completed this program in the past 2 or 3 years. The one who completed it first, her certification is K through 8.
Okay.
But the person who most recently completed this program says that South Carolina is telling her she can only be an administrator at the K through 6 level without 3 years experience in a middle school. I'm trying to find out, is that based on this program? Is it based on my state? I've heard that
I would think it is your state. And the reason I say that is, in most of the time, unless it's changed in the last little bit, in North Carolina, you are certified K-12.
Okay.
As for a principalship. Now, for a principalship in administration, looked at as K-12.
my principal called someone yesterday at the district office, and he said it depends on how the school sends it to the state.
All right.
I don't know what that means really, so.
Okay, then that's something from what we have been told. First of all, we get you certified in North Carolina. So you finish this program because of the fact that Gardner-Webb is in North Carolina. They are a licensing agent for North Carolina. Now, where South Carolina comes into play is South Carolina has a reciprocal agreement with North Carolina. And so then you have to apply to South Carolina once you have your licensure in North Carolina.
Yes.
That's really a Seth, I think, wait, I may be wrong. That's a Dr. Lamb question.
Okay.
So double check with him, but it is, something is bound to be related to the reciprocal agreement part. Because in North Carolina, most of the time, unless something has changed recently, if you were a school administrator, it was a K-12 licensure. And so, like I said, I would try to get in touch with Dr. Lamb and see if he can find out what's going on there. Andrea?
I do have a friend that took the South Carolina assessment, the one that we have to take for the reciprocal licensure, and she too was doing it in another state, but did the test for South Carolina because that's how you get the licensure here.
Right.
She said the test changed as of August 31st. Whatever test they were using is no longer going to be the test. There is a new test that has went into play this year. Now that test may be, I didn't look to see, but it may be, you know, broken down by K-12, K-8, or what have you. That could be.
You may have just solved the problem because it may be how you sign up for the test. If you're working in a K-8 or a K-6, and it may be that they only allow K-6 in middle school, they look at as 7-8 or some, or I've always thought of middle school as 6-8 and K-5 as elementary, and then 9-12 as high school. So, but I know there are all grades of different groupings of students. There are some K-8s, there are some that are 5-8, you know, there are some that are 9, let's see, is it 9, 10, and 11, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 through 12. So that may be the situation right there. You may have solved the issue.
Okay. Well, I'll call the State Department first.
Okay.
And then I'll go to Dr. Lamb then if I can't find anything through them. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. You have a great week.